Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
Brought to you by GlanviaConnect.com.
Hello and welcome to Farmview. Well, as usual, it's Kieran O'Connor here with your weekly farming programme. And once again, I have a very busy show for you this week. Well, on this week's programme, I discussed trainer Henry de Bromhead's and Rachel Blackmore's fantastic achievements last weekend and indeed its impact on the Irish horse racing industry. I have an update on Belview's new cheese plant court case and the huge impact of the dairy industry on our rural economy. And plus, I'll hear about the Waterford Seed company's new Wildflower Seed Production project.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanviaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.
From in second place, Balco de Flo, and then in third place, any second now, Barrow Saint can't get any closer. But we're watching racing history here. Minella Times and Rachel Blackmore with Balco de Flo is trying to close the gap on it. But it is Minella Times and Rachel Blackmore who will make history and land at the Grand National. From Balco de Flo, then any second now in third, and then Barrow Saint followed by Farkler in behind those. But what a story, what a jockey, and Rachel Blackmore wins the Grand National.
Look, it's amazing, it really is, as I say, like just stuff you dream about. Incredible. Rachel was brilliant on him, amazing to do it for the McManuses. Just, we got a lot of luck all the way around. He winged fences and just got a clear run, and it was just incredible, yeah.
And Balco de Flo was amazing in second, 100 to 1, but didn't run like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, he's a class horse, as we all know, and he just lost his form, but Rachel was convinced he was really enjoying the cross-country at Cheltenham when he unfortunately came out. Brilliant to see him run so well for the Racehorse Club as well. Like, it's just fantastic.
And the voice there of the one and only Henry de Bromhead of Knockeen, Butlerstown, who did Waterford and Ireland proud last weekend by adding the Aintree Grand National to his fantastic Cheltenham, where he captured the 3 featured races, the Holy Trinity. He added the Aintree Grand National, and now he's won, in golfing terms, the 4 Masters in the 1 year. Join us to discuss indeed the impact of all of this from the Irish field is their editor, Leo Powell. Leo, welcome to the programme.
Delighted to be with you.
Leo, obviously down here in Waterford, we're absolutely all on a high after last weekend. Henry de Bromhead, Rachel Blackmore do it again. It's just incredible when you sit back and think of that achievement, which never ever been achieved before. The 3 big feature races at Cheltenham, followed by an entry 1-2 to add to the 1-2 in the Gold Cup.
Amazing stuff, Kieran. I mean, literally, it is almost at the point of we've run out of her to describe it. Rachel finally shattering of that sort of glass ceiling that will a woman ever ride the Grand National winner. Now the question might be how many of them she could win into the future. It's absolutely fantastic. And what I love about her in the heat of the moment in all of it, she wasn't carried away in the sense that a very grounded lady, and credit to our sport. She was the one who was sort of deflecting the attention away from herself almost, saying, and look what Henry de Bromhead did. He trained not only the winner, but he trained the second as well for all the Cheltenham success he's had. So, yes, it was absolutely a Saturday that thankfully brought tears to my eye, but tears of joy at the success.
The last time I had you on here, as regards the whole piece on Gordon Elliott, a dreadful low time for everybody involved in the racing. And you mentioned at the time, you were saying before Cheltenham, let's hope Cheltenham will give us a lift, and then the Aintree Festival. My God, in your wildest dreams, I'm sure you never considered this type of lift.
Never. I couldn't have seen it. I mean, you were certainly hopeful that from the point of view of the horses that went to Cheltenham, we had an amazing battalion. We do have the best horses in training are in Ireland at the moment. You see the amount of English and overseas owners who have their horses here as well, which is fantastic. But the whole success story goes beyond just the horses that are trained here, because obviously Willie and Henry and others will have horses that are bred elsewhere. But the Irish bred successes has been absolutely phenomenal. And at Cheltenham, where there were 28 races, 20 of the winners were Irish bred, 9 of the Grade 1 winners. I mean, numbers were absolutely phenomenal. A moment in time in one sense, but they tell us a great story about success at every level of sport here in Ireland.
And of course, for us down here, of course, the excitement too with Cool Reevy, the Flynn family, that great win back in the 70s with Melodon in the Triumph Hurl, and then Niall Flynn breeds the winner of the Mayor's Chase, the first Mayor's Chase. Again, a bit of history, and again, linking the Flynns back to that great success back in the 70s. So a great local one. And then on top of that, then last weekend, we had the Norris family as well. But the Flynn family's achievement with Cool Reevy. So really going back to grassroots down here.
Oh, very much for Liam and Gary Norris down in Woodfield Farm. outside Timor Thomas. I think they have Curtain Time. They bred the Irish Grand National winner. And they also bred the dam of the English Grand National winner. We've been celebrating John Allen, both the Gold Cup winner and the Irish and the Grand National winner as foals. But, for the Norrises, it's been a wonderful couple of weeks. And they bred another Grade 3 winner at the meeting as well in Aintree. It's been a really purple patch for them.
And indeed, the industry, the last time I spoke to you after the whole Gordon Elliott debacle, as we mentioned, you emphasised how big the industry is, and people often question the money the government put into the racing industry. But I know the racetracks are running behind closed doors, but you have the stud farm, the racing stable, you have the point-to-point season, you have the equestrian, you have the 3-day eventing, hunting, you name it. The industry goes far bigger than what we saw at Aintree last weekend.
Oh, absolutely. And, we talk about the £2 billion thoroughbred industry, getting to be as big again in terms of the sport horse sector, because a huge amount of that, of course, is leisure horses, and the amount of money spent in that is phenomenal. But I think that's a message that we really have to keep hammering out. Sometimes the national press will pick up on aspects of it, and, it might be prize money and the fact that wealthy people are winning it. But, wealthy people are putting an awful lot of money into the sport. They're buying very, very expensive horses, and money is filtering down. So if they give 200 or 300 or 400,000 for a point-to-point winner, that money goes into a yard, maybe in Wexford or somewhere in the southeast or anywhere around Ireland, and that will get spent again at the store sales, and those store men have bought them maybe as foals or brought them up to that stage. So it is a huge industry that goes into literally every parish of the country. It is a message that is, I think it's understood. I mean, in fairness to government and various ministers over time, it is well understood. I suppose with the urbanisation of Ireland and, it's so much been focused on the capital and bigger cities, it is really worth pointing out that this is a huge employer right throughout the country.
And as I say, racing goes on behind closed doors. A big 2-day meeting this weekend in Tramore, and of course on Sunday plans are in place. Speaking to Owen Byrne, very excited, the racecourse manager there, that Henry will be parading literally his list of champions at the Tramore meeting at the weekend. Positive note, once again, thanks for taking a call. Well done to you and involved in the Irish field. You're doing a tremendous job with your weekly publication every Saturday. Look forward to get it every weekend. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday in Tramore when the victory and the performance of Henry the Bromhead and of course Rachel Blackmore will be honoured at the track. Leo Powell, editor of the Irish Field, thanks for taking a call. Look forward to seeing you Sunday.
Thank you very much, Kieran.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanviaConnect.com, Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
Well, for an update on the dairy industry's impact on rural economy down here in Waterford in the southeast, and also an update on the very important new development for Glanbia at Belview, and indeed the whole An Taisce court action, we're joined from Glanbia, Ireland, for an update by Pat O'Keefe. He's the Corporate Affairs Director at Glanbia, Ireland. Pat, welcome back to our programme.
Thank you, Kieran.
Pat, before we discuss Belview, and obviously a lot of interest since I spoke to you when you launched the whole initiative there a few weeks ago as regards handling of peak milk, the whole area last weekend, there was a press release out from Glanbia, Ireland. I think people realising the amount of money that comes into the economy for milk suppliers, not alone in Waterford but right across the southeast and the Glanbia region.
Yeah, look, dairy farming is a very strong contributor to the rural economy. We put out the figures on a per county basis and it just breaks it down. I suppose we pay over €1 billion for milk each year. When you look on a per county basis, in a county like Waterford, it's €161 million paid for milk. You go up through to Kilkenny, it's 192, Wexford 136 million, Tipperary we pay 131. So all those are big numbers in terms of money that's paid out for milk. But I suppose the big value from a rural economy point of view is that farmers, when they get that money, they tend to spend it locally. They buy local input, they pay for local labour, they have milking machine service technicians and AI services and feed services that are all the local economy. And I suppose that's the big difference. While the foreign direct investment sector and the multinationals are really important in Ireland, they tend to maybe spend more on imported raw materials services maybe than the local dairy economy.
And of course farming families live and in the rural economy. There's no one commuting to work. Any farmer who is supplying milk is living in that area, in that region, and indeed the wife and family are all contributing to the economy in that immediate area.
Yeah, I mean the figure kind of is about 90% of the money spent tends to be spent locally, so it is different to other sectors. And when Belview was launched originally in 2015, there was a big study done looking at that rural economy value and the multiplier effect of that money spent. And it's very clear in dairying. It's kind of common sense really, I suppose. That silage contractors and other services tend to be local, and likewise labour for relief milking and stuff like that tends to be local, so the money tends to be spent locally.
And of course the last time, Pat, you were on about the whole area of peak milk, and obviously with the demise of milk quota, and thankfully that came particularly down here in Waterford and South East, there was a huge explosion in actually milk production down here in Waterford and in the southeast, and you've introduced a peak milk policy, obviously not music to people's ears, but you're basing it on the last 3 years, 2018, 19 and 20, and obviously it's going to affect the peak milks of April, May and June. Where are you with that? Because obviously the farming organisation and farmers in general were taking it back at this whole approach by Glanbia.
This was announced back in early, middle of March, Kieran, in terms of the peak milk policy. I suppose the reason for it was to take a step back in terms of a planned investment in Belview that's delayed due to a court challenge to the planning permission that was granted by both Kilkenny County Council and subsequently by An Bord Pleanála. So that's currently in the court. But I suppose the bottom line impact of that is that the plant that's due to come on stream in 2022 won't be available for peak milk. And I suppose with the seasonal milk production system we have in counties like Waterford and across the southeast, it's based on grass, so the cows tend to calve in early spring, and you have a peak milk supply around the April, May, June period, when all the plants are full, whereas across the course of the year the plants are only maybe 60-65% full. So it's a challenge, and it's a challenge for farmers that have been expanding because of the advantage of the abolition of milk quotas and have been expanding, quite significantly, investing in their farms and growing their milk production by, maybe 6% a year on average across the whole pool. And unfortunately now that rate of growth won't be possible to sustain for the next 3 years, so we have to send out allocation.
Now, as regards the farming scenario, the last time you were on, you mentioned that whole piece, and that down here in Waterford, a lot of the expansion has happened. But for guys who are new entrants and guys particularly who are caught midstream, both from financially and indeed from their expansion and purchasing new buildings, new parlours, new cows, new land, you name it, are caught midstream. What's going to happen for them? Because you mentioned about a pool of milk being available for special cases as such.
Yeah, so look, we're very conscious of that, Kieran, and look, we went out and we met all our committees, and we got a lot of feedback from ICMSA, from IFA, but particularly from our regional committees. We have one based in Dungarvan, we have one based in Kilmeaden in terms of the regional committees, and they fed back into the process. And I suppose the reserve pool is designed to allocate milk, where we give an allocation to a supplier for the next 3 years, but somebody like the case example cited there, where somebody might have leased land or bought land, or a son or daughter might have come home from college and invested in the farm to grow the business, to have two family incomes rather than one. So we're very conscious of those scenarios. So they'll apply to the reserve pool now. And the feedback from the committees, I suppose, was that the reserve pool would need more milk available to it. And I suppose there was a retirement scheme announced which generates some volumes, but the view was it probably wouldn't generate enough volume. So what's been added now at the suggestion of suppliers is that there's a voluntary reduction scheme where some suppliers have said they mightn't be just quite ready to retire, but they might be willing to reduce their supply at peak on a voluntary basis and commit to do that over 3 years, and that would create extra milk for allocation through the reserve pool process. Now, the letters have gone out this week, Kieran, for people with their individual allocation, and now for those who have a challenge, we'll be sending them separate letters in the coming weeks to apply for the reserve pool.
So guys, production over the last 3 years, that's their base, and it's the 30% penalty for any milk over what they produced in those 3 years for the peak months of April, May, June. Is that the scenario?
Yeah, no, we took their highest year of 2018, 2019, 2020, and then depending on the scale of the supplier, they were a smaller scale supplier, we gave them a 10% growth allocation. If they're medium,
so there is concessions for them, yeah.
And if they're above 550, there's 2.5%. And then after that, that's an allocation for each of the months, and then the reserve pool is for people who those allocations aren't sufficient for their needs.
The farming organisation, you said you met a lot of the regional committees, indeed the council, and the general feedback from the board, from farmers. Are you finding that people are disappointed that the farmers are taking the hit here, or do people understand the scenario that Glanbia find themselves in because of the whole Belview scenario? And we'll mention that about the whole Antoshka objection and the whole court case that's overhanging. Yeah, look, we met Waterford IFA, we met ICMSA, we met the banks, we met Teagasc, we met a large number of people. And look, it came as a shock to some people. I suppose they hadn't been aware of the planning challenges in terms of the delays. The project was announced in January 2019 and it had been approved by Kilkenny County Council, and in June 2020 it got An Bord Pleanála approval, but it's now in the court's process, unfortunately, so that delays the green light for proceedings. So look, I suppose initially obviously there was shock in the sense of people had come from an era of milk quotas for 30 years, and then that freedom was opened up in 2015, and there's been great positivity in the dairy sector ever since, and increased employment and increased enthusiasm really, and lots of opportunities being taken, young people in particular. So it's kind of, in one way it was a sad day in terms of, for example, new entrants in the southeast. We have to close the door now to new entrants who are not members of Glanbia Co-op. So a young female or male in Waterford, unless they're a member of Glanbia Co-op, the opportunity to go dairying is no longer there for the foreseeable future. And to me that's a sad development in terms of where we've come from and where we potentially could go. So that's just the reality of where we find ourselves. But you have a pool of milk, sorry Pep, but there is a pool of milk there. It's a case of for deserving case as such, in inverted commas, be it new entrants and be it for guys cutting expansion.
But that's existing suppliers, Kieran. I mean, there isn't a pool of milk for future new entrants.
I understand. The door is closed as such on that.
Like you say, there has been a steady flow of entrants, and that's important to any sector to have new blood coming through, intergenerational change, because again, for a co-op that's over 100 years old, you need a new generation coming through all the time. So anyway, we are where we are in terms of that. We have to wait.
And there is a concession for them. Pat, on that, I was just going to ask you, as regards on Tashka, obviously there was a big plan expansion, as you say, back to 2019. This was all getting underway, passed by the council, passed by on board Penala, and now you've on Tashka taking it to court. How long can this drag on for? And as regards getting a sod turned in Belview for this new 140 million plant, when are you hoping, or is there a timescale on this?
Look, it's out of our control, really, Kieran. Ultimately, obviously we've jumped the two hurdles that were there, and there's Kennycounty and then on board Penala. So now it's being challenged in the courts, and that's the right of Antashka or any other objector to challenge, and I have no problem with that. I suppose the frustrating bit is the timelines in terms of the process tends to drag on. Months become years, unfortunately, and obviously it'll take a couple of years to build the plant after you get the green light. From a farmer point of view, there's the additional complication of peak milk and the seasonal factor. So in other words, if the factory isn't there for a factory coming on stream in July or August, going to do a lot or nothing for peak milk capacity because the plants are all full kind of through the spring period. So it's a frustration. We're awaiting the court outcome, and that'll come in some point in the next couple of months. We'll see where we go from there.
Pat O'Keefe, Corporate Affairs Manager for Glenveagh. Listen, Pat, thanks for that update, and obviously we'll be keeping a close eye on that whole Antashka Belview court action, and let's hope there'll be a positive result there for everybody involved in the industry. Pat O'Keefe, thanks for taking our call.
Thank you, Kieran.
Well, recently on our programme we spoke to Julie Power of SeedTech, who are based in Waterford Coast, about the whole area of blooming native. Well, developing that, SeedTech in Waterford and DBN have announced a collaboration to harness the expertise and wildflower seed production, a whole area of interest to a lot of people involved in the agri sector, particularly the farmers themselves, and the whole area of biodiversity. And we're joined by a man very much to the fore, is Tim O'Donovan. He's Technical Director at SeedTech. Tim, thanks for taking our call.
No problem at all, Kieran. Thanks very much for the invite.
Tim, as I said in the intro, we spoke about blooming native there with Julie a couple of weeks ago on the programme, but now you have a collaboration really, because the whole area of wildflower seed production, the whole area of biodiversity, and really people literally going back to nature is starting to really take off.
Yeah, I mean, look, across, I suppose, the pandemic has kind of encouraged people or forced people into their back gardens, and I suppose they're looking out, they've nothing else to do, and they're looking at their gardens and saying, well, how can we make it a little bit more attractive? Or maybe they're looking at the birds and the small animals that are naturally coming into gardens, and they're saying, well, can we do anything to help these animals? So that's where we think that the market is at the moment, or where people are starting to really get into it. I mean, I suppose the other thing then, Kieran, from the point of view of agriculture, the whole area of biodiversity, if you and I were to talk about that 10 years ago, we'd be talking to a very small select group of people, whereas today I think there's very, very few farmers, business owners, people at the top of international conglomerates or PLCs that don't know that biodiversity is a huge thing that's on the agenda, and I suppose there's an awful lot more discussion about it. And I mean, you hear these very stark warnings about the great wipeout of species that's happening around the world, and you read about it. It's probably a little bit more visible, maybe on Twitter and Facebook and other media like that. But certainly, it's a huge area now that has to be given due concern.
Now, as regards the whole area of your collaboration, you got involved with DBN, Design by Nature. You must tell us about the background there, because obviously you want to really harness this expertise on wildflower seed production and really develop it, because demand is outstripping supply as we speak.
Yeah, and I mean, look, one of the key things is to have a certain amount of species seed that we're selling has to be, we would like to have it produced in Ireland, because, native production of native wildflowers makes sense, whereas importing native species of wildflowers from abroad doesn't really make that much sense. So we started a partnership with by Nature, Mr. Sandro Coppola. He's been in the wildflower production business for a number of years now, and is very well known by all the people, the stakeholders, the county council, biodiversity officers that work for the council. They'd all know his name. Our expertise is in production of high quality seed. I mean, look, you've been down to our seed plant there, Kieran. You saw the investment we put into it. We're also well known, like we're in the game since the 1830s in Waterford, the Power family, and we have produced lots of plants, including flowers. Actually, back in the day, we were a shrubbery business at one stage.
Right.
So producing flowers is nothing really new to us in the history of the company, whereas producing wildflowers is something that's new, and we're finding it very interesting to join up with Sandro and, overcome the challenges of flowers, because, in one sense, we're used to producing hybrid barley and hybrid rape, and, those seeds all are of the one species, the one variety. They're controlled by the Department of Agriculture. There's laws around them. They all germinate on the same day. They generally ripen on the same day, whereas wildflowers are a totally different species to work with, because the wildflower by its nature, part of its survival mechanism is that it actually matures differently on seed heads. So if you take your oxeye daisy, if you take your cornflower, your poppy, the things that people are seeing now in these wildflower mixes, not all of those seeds will mature on the same time. When you sow them, they'll have different dates of germination, and it's to try and marry our expertise in seed with the expertise in wildflowers that Sandro has.
So as regards seed production as such and the climate we have here in Ireland, obviously developing it at a larger scale, how difficult has that been, and what type of results are you getting, and when will you have these products ready for market?
Well, we'll say our aim will be to have products on the market 2022, Kieran, some amount of native production in them from our own productions in Waterford. This is our first year producing them in the partnership with Sandro. So far we've had great success in terms of getting the species to come to a certain stage. It's only really and truly from around June onwards that we'll start to see the flowers in bloom. And
you'll be able to see the fruits of your labour, as you say.
Yeah, at the moment we can see the green little plants, and they're all in their strips where they're supposed to be. So when the flowers come up, we'll start to see the colour. But then we would expect harvesting kind of July, August, and drying them, segregating them, putting them into the various mixes. One of the things that we see happening with the whole, the green agenda, the Green Deal, the ag climatised policy, all of the government policies are talking about carbon, sustainability, biodiversity, and wildflowers, I think, have a part to play in that. Even for your own mental health, having a nice flash of colour around the edges of fields, I think it does make enough.
Well, definitely, difference. Yeah. For more information on this whole area, because as I say, it is of great interest, and the fact that we'll have our own native seeds available next year on the seed. Where could people go, Tim, to find out more?
Well, our own website, Luminative, is on the web. Seed Tech, we'll have a small bit as part of our website.
Right.
And, we will have updates on Twitter and Facebook as we go through the season.
Tim, listen, it's a very exciting time. I'm delighted that the likes of Seed Tech and DBN coming together there for the whole wildflower seed production. It's a fantastic initiative, and I know it's great to have a Waterford-based company involved in it. Tim O'Donovan, Technical Director at Seed Tech in Waterford. Listen, Tim, thanks for taking the call. The best of luck with your wildflower seed production. I think it's a great concept, and it's something that I'm sure the farmers will be buying into. Thanks a million, Tim.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Thank you.
And before I go, a reminder that the online sales continue at Waterford Rossmart this Saturday morning, with calves from 10 o'clock and cattle from 9:30. And don't forget, the final Rossmart dairy sale will take place on Friday next, the 23rd of April at Dungarvan. Cattle sales every Monday from 11. And a reminder that the very successful calf sales continue every Thursday from 12 noon. Of course, all sales now online at livestocklive.com. Now, Colette Manahan from Mobile Training was on to remind us that the Agri Farm Safety Code of Practice courses have now gone online, with a course being scheduled for Thursday next, the 22nd at 7 p.m. So they're now taking bookings for the same, and the course is a core requirement, of course, for TAMS grants. So for more information, you can look up mobiletraining.ie. And a reminder, of course, racing on Sunday at Tramore behind closed doors is live on TG Car, and you'll have a chance to see Henry de Bromhead parade his champions. While on the racing front, oh my God, what a week for local Waterford connections. Of course, pride of place going to Knockeen. Butlerstown trainer Henry de Bromhead captured the world's greatest steeplechase, the Aintree Carnation, in brilliant fashion, with the brilliant Rachel Blackwood on board. That added, of course, to his Cheltenham Festival winners, an unbelievable feat indeed. Probably one we won't see repeated in our lifetime anyway. So congrats to Henry and all of his hard-working team. You've done Waterford and Ireland proud again. Plus, well done to Liam and Gary Norris of Woodfield Farm stud Glendanigan, Dungarvan. They bred the dam of the Aintree national winner last weekend, as well as the handicap hurdle winner at Aintree, to add to the breeding of of the Irish Grand National winner last week. What a success for the Norrises. Also cross-channel, we'd wins for Ballylaneen native Pat Phelan at Lingfield and well-known Dungarvan native trainer Dennis Coakley at Warwick. But great news from cross-channel that Dungarvan jock Sean Hoolan is making a great recovery from a series fall last week at Plumpton. So on behalf of all of Waterford, I'd like to wish Sean a speedy recovery. Back home on the racing front, we'd wins for Rathcormac trainer Pat Flynn at Gordon, at Wexford Kinsale Beg trainer Ken Budd was in the winner enclosure, as well as a nice win for Henry de Bromhead, John Phelan, the Waterford owner, and Waterford jock Dylan Robinson, with Henry also gone on to saddle a nice winner at Fairyhouse as well. On the point-to-point front, great to see point-to-point action resume last weekend, with renowned Woodstown horsewoman Rosemary Connors saddling her very first winner as a trainer at the Cork point-to-point. So well done to Rosemary, first of many, I'm sure. Also well-known Waterford owner John Phelan was in the winner's enclosure at Tip point-to-point as well. So what a week to remember for Waterford connections. So that's my lot for this week's programme. So once again, my thanks to Sean and Ollie for all their help in putting this week's programme together. So from myself, Kieran O'Connor, stay safe, keep up the protocol, and hopefully I'll have your company again same time next week.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanviaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.